Hi everybody, and welcome to Axiom's presentation on using technology to expand the opportunities of enrollment in rare disease studies. I'm Brian Dempster. I'm the Senior Director of Global Clinical Management here at Axiom Real-Time Metrics. I've been in the industry for 25 years, and during that time, I've worked across a number of therapeutic areas of pharma, biotech, device, and also as a CRO provider. I'm joined today by my colleague, Dawn Weagle. Dawn?
Thank you, Brian. So I'm Dawn Weagle. I'm the Associate Director of eClinical and Project Management at Axiom. I've worked for over 20 years in the pharma, biotech, and device industry, and often specializing in early phase oncology, hematology, immunology, pediatric, and rare disease studies. And happy to be part of this webinar for you. Thank you. Brian?
Thanks, Dawn. So a little bit of background of us here at Axiom Real-Time Metrics. Axiom Real-Time Metrics is celebrating its 20th anniversary this year as a CRO provider. We offer full service provision, and obviously during that 20 years, we've gained a tremendous amount of experience working across multiple therapeutic areas and also studies of varying size and complexity as well. Dawn.
So we're going to talk a little bit about subject recruitment in rare disease. And the first thing that we're going to talk about, Brian, if you could just go to the next slide, is the considerations of the patient population. So in the rare disease population, they are small by definition. They're often fragile. So these patients are often physically fragile or susceptible to infections. Your patients are primarily young. They're often infants or children where parental consent is required, or they're young adults. Your patient population in rare diseases is also very well informed. The patients themselves or family members are often well informed about the condition in itself and also about current availability of therapies or upcoming therapies and research. So successful enrollment begins with a project recruitment plan. So this plan should be completed at the beginning of the study during the project planning phase, well before initiation. And some of the things that will be included are site feasibility requirements, your study level and site level projections, the use of advertising and or patient advocacy groups in boosting recruitment, and knowing your population's barriers to accessing research, such as financial hurdles and travel complications. These are essential to starting off on the right foot. Please know that many of the rare disease patients are unable to work themselves, or they may have limited family income because so much time is required to care for these family members. So we need study budget considerations for this. As for travel complications, many may have mobility issues that need accommodation in getting to sites. And many of these rare disease specialists also are found in big city academic centers that can be very far and even across the country for patients. Additionally, we need to look at creating trust, creating confidence. So trust in the process. So trust between the sponsor and any vendors is essential and can be facilitated with open and honest communication. Trust between CRAs and sites is also important for a smooth working relationship. And sites want to know you really have their patients' best interests at heart. And that trust the site has in you will flow over to their patients and be felt when they're being approached for your study. Solid site initiation and training. Having all site team members at the table for initiations and providing pivotal focused trainings to the site team gets you off to a good start. And we also have empowering sites to identify eligibility sooner. So things such as pre-screening logs, they will help you track potentially eligible patients and will also help sites and sponsors have an early insight into inclusion and exclusion criteria challenges that may need review and revision. At Axiom, we've been able to use our Fusion platform to track pre-screening for both sites and sponsors in real time. So pre-screening logs in our Fusion system also allows us to see sites' recruitment efforts on a daily basis. Real-time pre-screening data means real-time decision-making. Thanks, Brian.
Great, thanks, Dawn. So I'd like to just delve into a little more of the practicality of some of those things that Dawn touched upon in that last slide. So pre-screening logs is an obvious example of where technology can assist you in the decision-making of your trial. So what are the advantages of having a pre-screening log? Well, clearly in rare disease patients, the patient population is often very small and targeted, and a pre-screening log will really enable you to be able to see whether or not you're targeting the eligibility criteria correctly for that patient population. The need to do this is well understood, but the mechanism by which it's done can vary from trial to trial, and as often in the past has been based on paper pre-screening logs where study coordinators would complete the information as they reviewed charts in a paper log, which at best would be faxed in the days of facsimile to the clinical management team, or another less satisfactory option even in those days was to have the pre-screening logs reviewed at the monitoring visit. Now, the information, of course, is collected in real time, but the review of that information is often very delayed and would require, a snapshot in time that could vary from week to week or even months in some cases, depending on the life cycle of the study. The advantage of having a system like Fusion, where the pre-screening log is entered directly into the EDC platform, is that the study coordinators can be entering that information in real time as they're reviewing charts, but also recording eligibility, and just as importantly, lack of eligibility for patients who are considered for the study. But the real advantage is the review of that information in real time by CRAs and the project managers, who can look at the system by logging in across the web-based aspect of Fusion, and they can actually draw information in real time as to whether or not the inclusion-exclusion criteria are adequately sourced, or indeed if study coordinators are looking at the right kind of patients. This can mean real decisions in terms of whether or not you're hitting the milestones and markers that you want to for your study. The other key piece of having a system like Fusion is, of course, that the system is very, very useful, but like any tool, a system is only as effective as the skill of the operator that's using that tool. And we take that very seriously here at Axiom, noting that it's important not just to have a fantastic system like Fusion, but also skilled operators who know how to get the best information out of that system and how to train people to put the best information into it as well. Subject engagement is key, as Dawn has already talked about, and we'll talk about a little bit more during the course of this presentation. In rare disease studies, it's especially important to have that subject engagement dialed in, and really subject engagement is driven by the site engagement with the study in many cases, and site engagement is really driven by how supported the site staff feel by the sponsor and the sponsor's counterparts like Axiom at a site level. We believe that that relationship starts with the CRA, and that's why we have expert CRAs who are expert not only in rare disease indications, but also expert in the practicalities of the regulatory standards and the monitoring standards that oversee a trial. So that having that expertise within the CRA group builds credibility in the minds of the site coordinators and the principal investigators. That credibility ensures trust, and that trust is really passed through to the patients, which means we get added patient engagement. So it's really a combination of having those systems like Fusion that allow us to get to the quality of the data, but it's also about the people who are operating those systems really getting the best out of them and really understanding what's required of the clinical study, which drives that credibility and drives that trust, and ultimately that's passed on to the patients, which means better chances of enrollment from subject eligibility as well. Dawn.
So I'm going to discuss a little bit about keeping your subjects at the center of your research. By keeping your trials patient-focused, one will create greater patient engagement and retention throughout the study. And some of the ways, the different ways that we do this is, one, I mentioned patient advocacy groups. Many or most of the patients or families of patients are registered with or review information from patient advocacy groups. So these are groups such as the Rare Diseases Clinical Research Network, or more specific examples are like the Vasculitis Clinical Research Consortium and the ALS group. Patient advocacy groups play a key role in disease research. They have vast networks with worldwide specialists and patients in their families. They are like a channel into the pool of patient recruitment for rare diseases. These advocacy groups have much experience with public awareness, legislators, governments, which also adds credibility to their presence. We often, as a CRO here and often at Axiom, we reach out to these advocacy groups to get a better understanding of the patient population, and also the patient population will contact them about available studies. We also look at study-specific websites. The creation of websites describing your study can be very helpful to patients looking online for information, or their families. Axiom has created many websites in the past for studies, and we can also help our clients submit them to regulatory bodies for approval. One of the other things that we're probably all more familiar with are site newsletters. So site newsletters keeps the sites engaged and your rare disease study at the forefront of their minds. Often recruitment for rare diseases can be very slow due to the rarity of the disease, and it can also be spread over many sites or globally. So this creates an opportunity to share recruitment news with all the sites and a chance to keep them informed of developing issues or changes, whether they're study related or regulatory related. An engaged site will feel like an important part of the overall team and a more enthusiastic recruiter, frequently keeping their patients in mind. Another thing that we use is, and especially here at Axiom, is the EPRO and eDiaries. So EPRO and eDiaries allow for ease of data entry and information provided by patients. Reminders can be programmed into the software, and EPRO and eDiaries are not as cumbersome to patients and their family as carrying around and keeping paper copies until the end of the study. At Axiom, we provide our clients with ePRO and eDiary options for their patients, and we have the data directly uploaded to EDC for real-time data capture and review. And this is an efficient process both for the patients and also our sponsors. Brian, if you'd like to take the next slide.
Sure, thanks, Dawn. So just in the last few minutes that we have here, I'd just like to talk a little bit about why Fusion gives you an advantage over other systems that may be out there in the industry. So the important aspect of Fusion to take into consideration is really the connectivity of the system. Fusion is a connected hub for all of your study data and consists of multiple, 15 in fact, different modules that can be purchased as part of your clinical trial support. So the system is bespoke, and you can select those modules that you want to use in your trial and use those exclusively. We advise that you would take the EDC module and then build the other modules around that, although that's not an absolute requirement. And then, of course, the obvious choice is to have Fusion run a complete suite, which gives all modules that are used within the trial in one platform. And it's really that single platform that is of vital importance because it provides connectivity for all of your data and also ease of access. One of the things that we also underpin here, and we've talked about this in the presentation, is it's not just about the system, but it's about the quality of the people that underpin that system and support it as well. So we have specific groups attached to each module, which really are experts in the field that that module supports. There's a single sign-on to all eClinical modules, so a single point of login to Fusion, which means that there's no need to have separate entry points and login information for your pharmacy information, your EDC, your adjudication. All of those things are accessed by a single point of entry into the system, a single login for each user. The other pieces of that connectivity of the data means that the data can be reported out much quicker as well, in real time. So as data goes in, we can run reports that choose data from each individual module and really tailor bespoke reports to the information that you want to get out of your study. Again, all of the data is captured in a central point, just to reiterate that, and that means that all of the data can be reviewed from reports from one place. That really means that faster access to the data and the access that you want to the data, the view that you want to see it, means that you can make decisions quicker as well. Of course, underpinning all of that is the people aspect and the expertise against each of the individual modules. Thank you so much for listening to us today. It's been a pleasure to present to you.
So thanks, Brian, and thanks everyone for joining us. We hope you found our seminar very helpful. If you're more interested in learning a little bit more about our platform Fusion, there's some contact information here on the screen, or you can also request a demo from us. Thanks again, and I hope you'll join us for our Q&A session. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody, for that presentation. So I'm joined again by Dawn. Dawn Weagle, our Associate Director for eClinical and Project Management. So I'll jump right into the questions in the chat session. So first question here is, what are the 4 main characteristics of rare disease patient populations? So Dawn, I think you talked a little bit about that during the presentation. Do you want to take that question?
Yeah, sure. So, sorry, I'm just looking here at the text here. What should be included in the project recruitment plan? Sorry about that. So, in the project recruitment plan, this should always be done at the beginning of the study, and we need the site feasibility requirements. We also need study and site level enrollment projections. Another good thing to have in our project recruitment plan is a use of our advertising or patient advocacy groups, how we're going to use those to help funnel our patients into our study. And also knowing your population's barriers in accessing research. So sometimes it's financial hurdles or travel issues due to physical limitations. So these are the basically the main points that you would like to have in your project recruitment plan.
And I think in terms of the characteristics of patients, I think we talked about those, or Dawn specifically talked about those right at the outset of the presentation. We're dealing with a well-informed patient population in rare disease. So I think that's the important characteristic to really focus on here. And you have to build that into your project recruitment plan as well. You want to have as many tools as possible that are obviously not directly targeting patients and subjects, but are able to provide via the sites the patients that the information that they would require, because this is a well-informed, well-engaged population in general in rare disease. And to Dawn's point, also a younger population than we see in other indications, and therefore perhaps we can draw the conclusion there that they're more tech savvy and able to go on social media and that kind of thing. So all of those things have to be considered when you're thinking about patient populations in rare disease. Okay. Next question I see here is, what are some of the ways we can be patient focused in the rare disease research? Well, I began to answer that question already with the answer to the last one. So I'm going to start that off and then hand over to Dawn by just saying, I think there's a little bit of the tech savvy conclusion that we can draw about patients in this population. And there are options that we have, again, to get the information out to the patient. So Dawn, if we run that slide that you talked about in terms of the technical options that we have for getting patients, like websites and that kind of thing. So
no, absolutely. And again, these patient advocacy groups, it comes up quite often because they're huge players in the recruitment and being connected to also the specialists out there in the rare disease community, and also the patients and the families. And also being patient-centric, understanding these advocacy groups, and because a lot of them do lobbying with the government, things like that, like really understanding the patient causes and the patient concerns. So I can't not emphasize how important the advocacy groups are. As Brian mentioned, the study-specific website. So these are people that are very, very in need of looking for new treatments or new cures or anything like that, or anything that might make their life easier, or ways that they can help in research to find out more about these defects, usually a genetic defect. So we can create these study-specific websites, because often these families and patients, they're going on the web looking for more information about their disease and what's out there. And like farther than the FDA listed of clinical trials websites. The other thing is having ePRO and eDiaries. So this actually, since these patients and their families are often very tech savvy, because they've been using technology a lot and going on the internet, these become very, very handy for them. They're less cumbersome than always carrying around paper copies till the end of the study. You know, often they're in a tablet, or it can be even done on a phone. Reminders can be programmed. There's often people have very high physical maintenance schedules and medication schedules with the rare diseases. So they're very helpful at making everything as easy as possible, or least complicated as possible for these families and their patients. And another thing, and it sounds sort of more like site, but we're all familiar with those site newsletters. So having the newsletters, because enrollment tends to be slow, as mentioned before, it keeps all the sites appraised and they feel more involved. It doesn't sort of fall off their radar. And also when your site is more engaged and the staff there, then they are updated, they feel more part of the study, and then they're more likely to bring it up to your patient. And we're also constantly, a lot of rare disease protocols do get amendments and things because they are difficult diseases. So knowing the site newsletters that maybe we're making upcoming changes or doing something to make it easier for the patient, and this all can pour over into the recruitment. And also knowing that we care about the study. And it also lets them know what's going on around. Often it's like many, many, many locations, or it can be also global with, just a few patients per site, but they're able to tell the patients, well, we already have so many patients also enrolled in X country or in total. So it's just keeping them informed, and it sort of builds a trust, and it's a trust that can be felt and carries over when they're talking to the patients or potential subjects. Thanks.
Donia, that's a really good segue in terms of the ePRO. I think one of the things that we've noticed over the recent years actually is that ePRO, although it's become now quite a common occurrence in the industry, and eDiaries as well, I've included in that, we, for the longest time, would provide, where ePRO was used, we would provide the hardware, so the iPads, the tablets, and the phones, and those kind of things to patients in order to complete their questionnaires and diaries. But what we're seeing increasingly, and I think it's probably very reflective in this patient population, is that patients don't want to carry a separate device around. They actually want access to the ePRO questionnaires and to the eDiaries on their own phones and tablets. And so the necessity to be able to provide an application that can be downloaded onto someone's own device, but still has all of the Part 11 compliance requirements built into it, is becoming something that we're seeing increasingly requested by clients. And that's obviously a direct result of the patient's demand for that kind of system to be available on their own, so an app download rather than a separate device that they have to carry. So the industry is definitely changing in terms of that, and that change is being driven primarily by the patient at the outset.
And Brian, I just wanted to add to that, also from the sponsor client side, in my past experience, I can't tell you for any type of study, rare disease or anything, how often paper diaries become misplaced, lost, whether at the home, the site, because of change in staff or anything, or, moving of offices. It's just one of those things that they often just automatically upload to our EDC or to the EDC you're using. So having ePRO or eDiaries, there's way less risk in loss of your source. So far, knock on wood, I have not had anyone ever lose anything that was ePRO or eDiary related. That patients or their families have lost them, but they're just over time, everybody knows from audits and all kinds of things and monitoring about diaries and things that don't get returned, or and that's the other thing, taking diaries back home. And sometimes you have unfortunate incidences where the patient can't continue in the study, and you might not end up getting those things back. So there's a very big benefit also to the client, the sponsor, in having the ePRO or eDiaries. Thanks.
Very much so. Yeah. So I don't see any other questions coming through. I'll just remind everybody, if you want to ask us a question, you can just drop it in the chat box.
If anyone has any questions they maybe don't want to ask in front of the group, or that they don't have time to ask here, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you guys afterwards? That's
superb. Thank you, Zoe. Yeah, well, we obviously have a booth here at the conference, so albeit virtual, so you're very welcome, and we would love to have as many people as possible join us at the booth after we've finished here, and you can direct it. If that's probably the easiest thing to do. If you want to ask a question directly to Dawn or I, or indeed any of our colleagues, then if you go to the booth, they can provide you with our individual contact information, and we always love to hear from people within the industry, especially on the sponsor side. We can only offer the best service as a CRO organisation by knowing what it is that clients want and what they're likely to want to see in the future as well. So we'd love to hear your thoughts on rare disease trials and the direction you think they're going, and what you think it is that contract research organisations can be improving upon in order to facilitate those studies better and provide better service. So please, do drop us a line.
Thanks, Brian. Okay, thanks, everyone.
All right.
Yeah,
thanks, Zoe. Thanks, Dawn.
Thank you both so much for joining. Really, really interesting talk. We love having Axiom here. You guys always give us some interesting talks. So fingers crossed we'll be seeing you in person in the next event. No, I feel like every time I say that and COVID keeps saying no. So fingers crossed next time.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much for joining. Bye.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.